Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. Many of us have dreamed of starting a blog or a social media presence and making a living through content creation. Today we are focusing in on SEO and looking at this through the lens of travel blogging, thanks to the expertise of Sydney Bonner. Sydney is a nomadic copywriter and consultant of over 9 years, exploring the world remotely and writing for Fortune 500 clients such as Nike, Airbnb, Microsoft, Kayak, and more. When she's not writing, she's traveling to destinations like Japan, New Zealand, and Guatemala to cover these experiences in her travel blog, Out of Nowhere Travel. She never travels without her Fujifilm camera and enjoys learning local languages, even if she pronounces them with an American Southern accent. So, hi, Sydney. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So to get us started, can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to pursue travel blogging?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my background is as a copywriter, and that really stemmed from journalism and just going out, taking photos and writing about experiences. And so in my free time, I do travel blogging and started a blog called Out of Nowhere Travel.
Fascinating. And what has your experience been with SEO as a travel blogger?
Sure. So if you want to get discovered as a blogger and just have other people read about your travel experiences, you'll really want to dial in your SEO. In other words, have those keywords in your content.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had a little bit of experience with other people sort of talking about SEO around me because I did some student journalism and that kind of thing, but never really got involved in it myself. So I'm interested to hear more about that. But before we dive into our topic too deeply, we want to get to know you a little bit better as a person. So I've got a few questions here for you. First of all, do you have a favorite book?
Yes. I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's still one of my favorites.
Amazing. And do you also have a favorite movie?
I do. It's The Breakfast Club.
Classic. I feel like these are definitely going to be good recommendations for our listeners as well. Do you have any podcasts that you're listening to at the moment? Are you an avid podcaster at all?
Lately, I've been more a listener on YouTube, but a classic favorite of mine is Girls Gotta Eat.
Mm, do you have any YouTube recommendations in that case?
Ooh, I really like Valuetainment.
Yeah,
He's
fair enough.
great. Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. And do you have a role model either in your personal life or your professional life?
Yeah, so my grandparents have been instrumental in my journey, and they're always the ones who I'm chatting with about the travel blog I have.
Oh, really? That's so cool. A lot of people, they come on here and they say, I don't have one specific person that I look up to, but there's, elements of personality that inspire me. But yeah, grandparents is a fantastic answer and probably one that I would have said as well, actually. And my last question to get to know you is there a course or a class that you've taken that has inspired you?
Sophia Lee blogging, she's absolutely incredible, and she does this class called Perfecting Pinterest.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that class and sort of what she teaches in that and how you've learned from it?
Yeah, so I mean, not to peek behind the curtain too much here into our
Yeah.
podcast today, but it's incredible. She's in her mid 20s and is a 6 to 7 figure blogger. And her course just teaches you how to organically grow your traffic via Pinterest, which is an incredible tool as a blogger.
Wow, that is really fantastic to know. I hadn't thought of Pinterest as a place to go for that kind of thing too much. I mean, I'm not really involved in the blogging world myself, but Pinterest is sort of something that I feel like a lot of people dip into just every now and then, and they're not there particularly consistently. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, like the misconception about Pinterest is that it's for like moms or maybe
Yeah.
if we're like going out there looking for like a cute outfit. But the secret is that like dads are on Pinterest too. And there's just this like whole other world out there where the whole like SEO keyword world in Pinterest is also connected to Google.
That makes sense now. Yes. Thank you for explaining all of that. We're going to get started with some of the basic terms that might come up pretty often in this podcast now. So, diving more deeply into our topic. First of all, especially because a lot of the people who come on this podcast as guests have different answers for this, how would you define affluence?
Affluence to me is it's like chasing wealth, right? Like seeing how far you can go to reach the heights of success.
Interesting. And then also, perhaps more up your alley, how would you define travel blogging?
Travel blogging, well, for me at least, has been just sharing my experiences, itineraries, reviews, etc., just with others who I'm looking to inspire. And so I think it's a way to get your story out in the world.
Absolutely. And is that something that really motivates you to keep going, that desire to inspire other people or to share with other people?
1000%. For me, that's what it's all
Yeah.
about.
Great. Amazing. So, having defined that, how would you describe the relationship between travel blogging and affluence?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because every country I've traveled to in the world teaches me something different about myself, and just it's like the way that we live, right? And so I look at each country I travel to as a stepping stone to achieve wealth and success, right? Just learning with each place that I go.
Mm, amazing. So, going more deeply into the travel blogging world, what would you say are the most important aspects of monetizing a travel blog?
I think authenticity is a big one. It can quickly be overlooked when you're out there and you're trying to blog about a topic, but it just boils down to your purpose, your why. If people are reading your content and they aren't getting that value and authenticity of your storytelling, they may, want to click elsewhere, not buy your affiliate products, and so on.
Interesting. And, authenticity, I find myself in some of the content creators that I follow online, for example, it really helps you to stay engaged with their content. Would you agree? Because it's something different and it's something you can relate to a bit more.
Absolutely. I think anytime, if you just want to jump into talking about like selling or monetizing things, like a personal value of mine when it comes to my blog is, I didn't start this blog with the intention to monetize. However, if I am advertising something on my site, it has a lot to do with it being a product that only I would use or highly recommend, right? So it's also like an extension of myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard other content creators talking about that online as well, where they would only ever recommend products that they personally use. And so it creates a bit more trust between the content creator and their audience, I suppose. So, diving in a little more deeply now to our focus of SEO, could you just explain for our listeners what is SEO?
So SEO means search engine optimization. And if you've ever searched for anything travel related on Google, let's say you're looking up hotels in Paris, uh, this is what's going to come up on that search engine, and is super important for bloggers, as you can imagine.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about what's the importance of SEO for travel bloggers?
Absolutely. I think it's an area on Google where you want your content to show up and it's competitive. And so just analyzing how it works, understanding how it works as a blogger, even if you're not as tech savvy,
Mm,
is very important.
absolutely. Are there any key aspects of SEO that bloggers should in particular consider?
Sure. So the main three that come up in my mind are technical SEO, on page SEO, and off page SEO.
Okay. Can you define for those who are listening who are not sure about SEO what those three things mean and how they apply to potentially wanting to start a travel blog and getting that seen?
Absolutely. So, technical SEO, which I'll admit I'm not the most technical person. I'm more of a creative writer. So, this is not my bread and butter per se, but you can often outsource for some of these areas of your blog too. Technical SEO has to do with like the speed of your website, optimizing it for mobile, creating a sitemap. So again, those terms are unfamiliar to you. They were once to me as well. And then on page SEO is definitely an area I'm very used to working in as a writer. This has a lot to do with the keywords you're including in your content to optimize it. And then off page SEO has to do more with the backlinking of your website, right? So maybe you're linking other other articles within your blog. I can read say that part if this is like too technical, but yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Fantastic. So, in that case, and since you mentioned, being a beginner and these words being unfamiliar to you at some point, could you take us through what are some of the common SEO mistakes that travel bloggers might make that might significantly hinder their visibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. And coming from a writing background, I would say a great shortcut for kickstarting your blog would be to use a site like WordPress because WordPress it really helps you leverage SEO. Like the site itself is optimized for SEO. So I would just say if you're seeing sections within WordPress that it's asking you to fill out, it's all to help you with your SEO, right? So at the end of the
Mm,
day, each blog post has a specific keyword. And so you'll want to include that keyword throughout, not only the article, but let's say like the URL, your meta description on Google. So I wouldn't pass up on any opportunity to include your keyword where you can.
absolutely. That's really interesting and great for people to be able to focus on that keyword and use it wherever they can. It feels like a good like focus point to help you in writing something. Do you often use it like before you start writing an article? You already have that in mind?
Typically now I do. I think when I
Mm,
first started, I just started telling stories. And now that I have more experience gaining organic web traffic, I work in tandem. So I typically have a story in my mind, right? Like say I went to Death Valley here in California and had a crazy experience camping. I may look up a keyword that relates to Death Valley and camping, right? So maybe it's like the best campsites in Death Valley. So that's how I, you know, create that kind of like symbiotic topic, right? Where you're including the SEO and the story together.
mm. Absolutely. Do you ever find that you or other bloggers might get hindered by it and focus too much on adding that keyword and SEO and all of that and it masks your story?
Oh, 1000%. And it's really interesting because each year as the Google algorithm changes, it seems that in the past Google prioritized however many times you could stuff that keyword, right? So even if it was obnoxiously stuffed like four times in a paragraph, and now Google does want to see the keyword stuffed in the article, but they are actually prioritizing quality content over the quantity.
Interesting. That's great. So, what types of content, such as, destination guides, reviews, personal experiences, and stories, what tends to perform best in terms of SEO and engagement for travel bloggers?
Well, this it's always going to go back to my storytelling, but I would say if you're going out to a specific country and you're experiencing something very unique, for example, I had the opportunity last year to visit Japan and I got to try the best matcha in the world in this town called um, UJI, and it's located outside of Kyoto. But what what really brought that story to life in my content was I wrote about the experience I had there. And so I find that if you're going out and experiencing it for yourself and then later writing about it, that content works really well.
Yeah, fantastic. So, it's more about the experiences than other forms of content that would you say optimize best?
Well, it really depends. I found that that has been one of my highest performing articles. But again, I went out and I collaborated. It was a brand collaboration. So I got to work hand in hand with Arigato Travel, a local travel company there in Tokyo. But I would say photography makes a huge difference in the quality of your storytelling. People seeing that they're your photos and not just like pulled off of a stock website.
Yeah.
But also, itineraries work really well because people don't have time always to like map out a whole 2 week trip to, let's say, New Zealand. So I just went to New Zealand and it's like my friends and I have already done that work. So sometimes content like that would be extremely valuable. And of course, like listicle type articles, like if you're listing like I went to Greece, so it's like what are the top 10 islands you should visit in Greece, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing all of that. And you mentioned photos there, which is actually going to be my next question. For visual content like photos and videos, what's the importance of optimizing them for SEO?
And it's funny you bring that up because this was an area I wasn't made as aware of until maybe a year or two ago. But the way that I mentioned the keyword stuffing throughout your article, it's important to not overlook including those keywords as well for each image. So, for example, if we're going back to like the Uji matcha tour that I mentioned, there's going to be other relevant keywords, right? So it might be like, I'm just making this up, green matcha or matcha flavored ice cream. You'll want to include those for each image. And again, this is how Google and your website work together to help rank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. And can you explain a bit more about what role images play in attracting and retaining readers as well?
Sure. So uh, when I mentioned previously about you taking your own photos, I think readers will go to your site, see your consistency, see your authenticity, they trust you and they keep coming back, and I think the main goal of any blogger is to see how long you can have that reader stay on your page. So if it's 20 or 30 seconds, that's already amazing.
Do you have any suggestions of tools and analytics that you would recommend employing to track your website performance and areas of improvement?
Yeah, so with WordPress, it's really convenient because there are several tools that are already built in. So you can work with this tool called Jetpack. That's just super easy. You can click easily within the console or platform of your website, and you can easily reference just the different statistics and traffic you're getting.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Is there anything else that you use personally that other bloggers might be interested in employing themselves?
Yeah, Google Search Console is fantastic, and Google Analytics. They have a lot of free features. And so monthly, I get an email that lets me know it's like, you have thousands of visitors on your site this month. You have organic web impressions or clicks, and Google Search Console can easily tell you that. They can also help you if you're unsure or just need more clarity on which keyword to use in your content, because as you'll see, there's a ton of keywords. So that can really help you get sharper, again, before and after you publish your article.
So then when you get this email from Google Search Console, do you then use that as feedback to change anything about your future articles?
Yeah, so depending on which articles are ranking the highest, Google can tell me how many clicks, how many people, and I can see the specific URL. So that serves as like a compass later for my future articles, where I can see, okay, the Uji Matcha Tour article performed really well. And I can just then focus on what really worked in that article to base off for future articles.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. So far in this episode, we've talked quite a bit about authenticity. What do you do personally to remain authentic and inject authenticity into your articles?
So one thing that it's funny, my grandparents are always reminding me when we talk about my travel blog is they said, don't think about it like it's work. Uh, Go out, like, have a glass of wine, retell that crazy travel story, really get into it, really enjoy it. And that is what brings me so much joy in continuing on with this blog. It's a hobby and a passion project, not just a monetization tool.
Absolutely. And I suppose the more fun that you're having out there in the world, just enjoying yourself, it sort of creates more experiences for then you to talk about later in your blog. So that totally makes
Yeah.
sense.
And getting to relive, crazy moments like getting lost on a moped in the Philippines, or, taking a
Yeah.
sip of the matcha in Japan. It's like those are priceless memories, but it's always fun to write about it, describe it again in writing.
Absolutely. So, back into our focus of SEO, how would you recommend integrating SEO practices with those monetization efforts, as you were saying, such as affiliate marketing and sponsored content?
It boils down to the keyword again. And in my mind, it's like a trifecta, right? So you've got a sponsored post and something that you're selling. And so it's a brand partnership, but like, what's the keyword? The keyword is again the thread that ties everything together. So in these articles, you can promote all the things that you want and sell the things you want. But as a writer, I think having a theme is important.
Yeah, and it probably makes it easier too. If you've got a theme you can stick to and tie everything in as you're writing, do you find it flows more naturally and comes to you more naturally?
Oh, definitely. And I, for example, haven't visited the UK before, but if I were going to write an article about visiting England, right? It's like, maybe you could sell like where to park at the airport in that article, or the best hotels in London for a unique experience. Like you notice how it's like if you're focused on London or UK travel, you could then easily tie these products or services. But just remind yourself, like, is it a service or product you would use? Have you used it?
Yeah.
So back to authenticity of what you're selling.
Absolutely. And that's really great advice for people making their blogs authentic as well. So, a little bit more deep into things, I suppose. How would you recommend measuring the return of investment on your SEO efforts?
Absolutely. I think a good place to start to get an overview of the metrics would be to lean into your media kit. And if you don't know what this is or don't have one, don't be intimidated. It's as easy as going to your friends in the blogging community and asking to see how they created their media kit, or going on Canva, pulling a template. And so a media kit is such a helpful tool as a blogger, because when you work with brands and do collaborations, this media kit not only tells your story, but it also shows an overview of the metrics you're using to measure your ROI. So, again, if you're a blogger who's just starting out, your numbers may not be as high as let's say, a six-figure earning blogger, right? Humble beginnings. So, even if you've got, let's say, like 10,000 views per month, you can collect this data from Google Search Console. And so this can be web impressions, clicks, views, profile views on social media, if you want to pull those stats. And then another way of looking at your metrics and your return on ROI is back to the Uji Matcha article tour. I again have a brand collaboration and partnership with Arigato Travel, and so I have affiliate links within that blog article that then sells the tour. And I've had success in selling the tours, and so you can often go into a website portal that an affiliate partner shares with you. It's like a private login page, and track your metrics there just based on the clicks and the number of sales you're getting.
Do you think that the metrics bloggers should focus on changes depending on whether they're just starting out or whether they're an experienced blogger?
I think it's like learning how to ride a bike. Like you're starting out with the basics. So your metrics and analytics at first may seem rather small. Like maybe your website traffic is still under 10,000, right? So your numbers are a little smaller to start, smaller but hopeful. And then as you continue going on about your journey, let's say you're into your blogging career, maybe 8 to 10 years down the road, these numbers will start looking larger and more competitive and land you better brand deals. However, too, if you're using social platforms, maybe you expand, so you may have a lot more numbers and metrics to track the further on you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, in your experience and in the highly saturated scope of travel blogging, what are the most significant changes that you've been able to observe in SEO practices over the past few years? You said you'd been doing it for 4 years. Has anything, changed drastically in that time?
Yeah, I think multiple things have come into play. So, as I mentioned previously, the focus from keyword stuffing now to quality content is huge. I think that gives writers a lot more opportunities to hone into their craft. Whereas ironically with AI now into play, this just keeps throwing wrenches at us, right? Is you would
Yeah.
think that this world is more technical and scientific, but I think at the end of the day, people still want that emotion in their content.
Yeah, it goes back to the authenticity, right? Something written by AI maybe is not really hitting a chord with people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Mm.
that's special advice in 2025 because how tempting it is to jump on Chat GPT and look for answers. I think people, humans reading humans content,
Yeah.
they will feel your storytelling more.
So with the ever-changing algorithm of SEO and with, the introduction of AI, that kind of thing, what's your advice for keeping up to date and preparing for these changes and SEO changes?
Yeah, I would say keep your eyes and ears on the ground. Follow Sophia Lee blogging, follow, Noma Collective. They're just one of my favorite travel companies that I traveled with previously, but just anyone and everyone you can think of, travel company or content related, and listen to what they're saying about content. Pay attention how they're producing it. And again, you can stay abreast to the trends out there if you're just looking for them.
Yeah. And any of these, like you were saying, Sophia Lee and, sites that you find are really helpful, we can link these for our audience in our show notes. So anything that you think are great resources, you should all be able to jump on the show notes and see. So now we're going to move on to our practices and habits segment. Would you recommend any habits for travel bloggers to practice their and improving their SEO?
I think it's as simple as setting time each week, whether it's 30 minutes every other day or maybe 2 to 3 hours on a single day.
Yeah, makes sense. And what would you recommend them practicing during that time that they've set aside?
Yeah, I think if there's an area about SEO that makes you uncomfortable, whether
Mm.
it's keyword stuffing, again, we don't do that, but learning how
Yeah.
to seamlessly weave a keyword into your first paragraph, or if you're a confident writer, but like me, you're maybe more intimidated by some of like the technical SEO, right? Go watch YouTube videos, go like understand what you're getting into. I think if you break it down for yourself, you might be surprised. It's a lot more simple than you think.
Yeah. And are there any challenges that people face when they're trying to do this?
Yeah, I think the internet and SEO can be overwhelming. I think uh, just in terms of information overload, uh, you know, sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees in our own content. And so sometimes it could be as simple as taking a notebook, writing down your intent for the article, writing out a keyword, like boiling it down to the basics, and then you
Yeah.
can just build the content around it.
Yeah, that's super helpful advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're now going to move on to our open mic segment. So, this is your chance to tell our audience about anything that you are passionate about. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to what we've discussed so far. So, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, ironically enough, I just traveled to your side of the world. I got the opportunity to go to New Zealand. I just got back a couple weeks ago.
Wow. And so, should we be expecting New Zealand content on your blog at the moment?
We should. Now, there is
Yeah,
something I've been like rather obsessed with, and it's pretty funny because we were, like typical tourists, we're riding a tour bus to go see where Hobbiton and where Lord of the Rings was filmed.
of
And
course.
so as we're, yeah, like you have to,
Yeah.
and as you're riding on this bus, our tour guide, special shout out to David. He was like, "You have to try the hokey pokey flavored ice cream." And we're like, "What? Like, what is that?" So every chance we got when we could buy or try this flavor, we were all about the hokey pokey ice cream flavor.
What does it taste like?
Yeah, it's in my mind, I thought it was butterscotch, but like Google
Ah.
says it's like vanilla with hints of toffee.
Wow, I've never heard of it before. Maybe I'll have to go to New Zealand and try it. You've intrigued me
Yeah.
now. Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to reading about that on your blog, hopefully. I'll have a look to see your New Zealand content. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to conclude our episode now. If our listeners want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at out of nowhere travel, or using those same words. You can go to outofnowheretravel.com on my website.
Amazing. Well, hopefully, all of our audience will check you out and look at your articles and take on your amazing advice if they want to start their own travel blog. So, thank you so much, Siddhi, for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on the show and teaching us. I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope that our audience has too. So, to our audience, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
You've been listening to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at affluence.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.